discuss this. It's a non-political related thing, but it is a great story that I want to cover real quick. Oh man, this is a good one because we've done so many, I guess, covers, news stories, whatever about this subject. It makes it even more hilarious to see yet another example of it. I have said that accessibility has ruined the modern gaming experience. And a lot of people that don't understand that because they don't try to understand it. And it's because they've been accustomed to, well, what we have now. So let me explain yet again, just really briefly. When I talk about accessibility, I'm not talking about like colorblind bullshit or anything like that. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about games that try to appease the lowest common denominator for the sake of having the largest base of players that are able to access it and either be good at it or complete it instead of just making a good game. Okay? When games don't do that, you have particularly the games journalists that get upset and get mad, right? Oh, what do you mean I have to actually play the game? I can't breeze through it mindlessly. What do you mean I can't do that? Why doesn't the Demon's Souls remake have a difficulty change? That type of shit. It's things like that I think have ruined games because they're looking at it. And again, I don't know who that's coming from. Is that coming from the suits? I don't know, maybe. Where they say, okay, yeah, we got to make this accessible. And yeah, of course, games have for a while, for a long time, certain games have different difficulty and difficulty adjustments. But you have to understand that doesn't mean that the game is good. And that doesn't mean you're making your game more accessible, especially when you consider the fact that if you have like difficulty changes and all of that, something's being made on scale. And not often is that pulled off really well in terms of what is deemed as more difficult. But something had to be made on scale because the base game had to be adjusted in some way to make it either easier or more difficult. Some pull it off better than others. Metroid Dread came out, which I never was the biggest. I wouldn't say I was not into Metroid, but I wasn't the biggest Metroid person. But Metroid Dread came out, and this is what some of the Euroanalysts are saying about it. Let's look at it. Let's go one by one. Coming from Mashable. Metroid Dread is a thrilling twist on a classic, but it made me miserable. Games don't have to be grueling to be great. Man, if this doesn't represent exactly what I've been saying, let's see what this guy had said. It's not that Metroid Dread is a bad video game. I just never want to touch it again. He says punishing, and he recommended avoiding it. Why is that? Let's see what else he said. That's where and why Metroid Dread is a resounding failure to me. You can't change the difficulty or make the experience more accessible. Oh, poor you. Poor Euroanalyst. Poor Euroanalyst. You can't fly through the game so you can get your review out really fast and talk about it. There are no compromises that make the ease of pain of particularly challenging, that might ease the pain of a particularly challenging encounter. If you get stuck on a boss for 2 hours, well, hopefully you'll handle it. You get a handle on it before the third hour passes. Yeah, it's called learning and adapting. I don't know. That's what video games used to be about, right? That's why a lot of us have stacks upon stacks of Sega Genesis games that we never beat, and nobody bitched or cried about it or told the game developers to change it because they couldn't individually beat it because we weren't bitches. He says, it's not one particular thing that broke Metroid Dread's spell for me. The real issue is how fundamentally unfriendly it is an overall experience. It's challenging, but that challenge is a solid vertical wall here. There's nothing in the way of help for players who can't climb that wall. You're expected to just be patient and keep trying. And to borrow one of the more annoying gamer troll catchphrases, get good! It ain't a troll phrase. There's a reason why we say that shit. I said for the longest time, Souls games, Soulsborne and such, those guys did more to stave off the current era of gaming than any other part of the industry had ever did. Any other part. because the people thought it was toxic and it didn't mean anything. It meant a lot, because what they're saying is the problem and the adjustment needs to be on you. The game is what it is, right? The game is what it is. And you're not under a sort of requirement, or you're not entitled to be able to complete it like other people have, not as quick as they have or anything. You have to adjust. Get good. Simple. And if you can't, you drop it, you move on to something else. That's not the game's fault. I don't want to get the kind of good that's required here, says the poor games journalist. I tried and it was deeply unpleasant. When I got stuck on a certain boss for multiple hours, so much frustration built up in my repeated attempts to beat it that there was no satisfaction when I finally succeeded. Because you a bitch! That's why. That's why ain't no fucking actual gamer gonna look at a situation like that and gonna be like, oh, well, I feel bad. No. Y'all remember when I spent fucking 2 hours fighting Kojiro on fucking Ghost of Tsushima on the hardest level with no resolve going into the fight, and I refused to quit. Everybody watch that YouTube stream. I fought him for like a fucking 2 hours. No resolve. I had no resolve. I went in there fighting him on the hardest stage, and he kicked my ass like fucking like back to back to back until I finally met him. And I felt fucking fantastic after beating him. I felt great. It was a challenge. Don't get me wrong, but I felt great because I'm not a bitch, right? I'm not a bitch. I don't look at that obstacle and say, well, I can't get over that obstacle. I'm going to cry about it, or they need to move the obstacle out of my way or make it easier for me to climb it. No, I go climb it. Other people have done it. Repeated attempts to beat it, that there's no satisfaction when it finally succeeds. He says, that is a recurring issue with boss fights, with pathfinding, and even with some later run-of-the-mill foes that you encounter. The more I played Metroid Dread, the less I wanted to keep playing. I didn't manage to finish in the end, and I'm sure I never will. What a fucking pussy. Because you're crying about it. If you were like, okay, I can't beat it, and you were like, well, that's fine. All right, I give you props. But you couldn't beat it, and now you're whining about it. And you think the game is a problem because you couldn't individually beat it. It's a damn shame. I love Metroid. I want to play all the Metroid and experience this whole story for myself. But Mercury Steam decided for whatever reason that only those people who pass the test, who master the controls, who happily throw themselves at challenges again and again. That's what gaming's about. This guy is literally crying about what is a core part of gaming. I'm going to repeat that line again. He said, but Mercury Steam decided for whatever reason, as if it's just some mind-boggling concept. He says that only those people who pass the test, who master the controls, who happily throw themselves at challenges again and again, as if he says, who, to use the atrocious shorthand again, get good enough, can experience all the joys and wonders that Metroid Dread has to offer. That's what video gaming is about. That's specifically what that's like. You're bitching about. It's like being a track athlete and crying about running. If you're not like a field athlete, like, shot putter or some shit like that. It's like saying, I don't want to run. Like, that's part of the fucking thing that you do. Part of the game is exactly that. The game, you're playing it. It's not I know this is the problem. Why we have more games that are more geared to be interactive movies than they are actually games, where the game walks you through and holds your hand through fucking everything. Catch-up mechanics online, FIFA, Mario Kart, like those types of concepts. Like the game or playing a video game is about exactly what this guy's crying about. Mastering controls, seeing those obstacles, getting beyond them. That's what a boss fight is. It's a reason why they're more difficult than the little world that you go do, because it's meant to be a fucking challenge. And he says he can experience all the joys and wonders that Metroid Dread has to offer. This guy is who I'm trying to combat in gaming, and a lot of you guys are. It's the normie, games journalist person who thinks because they can't get good that something's wrong with the game. And they feel entitled to be able to access it in its entirety just because they got it, which is utter nonsense, by the way. But that's what they think. So therefore, because they can't pass it, the game's not helping them out. Well, therefore, something must be wrong with the game. As if the game developer is not simply giving you something to play, and it is what it is. Those are the best games to me. It's not about making it accessible, wider demographics. No, you can have a dedicated fan base of people that may not be the largest pool. I get it. We're capitalists at the end of the day. It's about making money. But you can have success within your own medium. Demon's Souls has showed you that, for example, where it's niche. But the people that rock with those games, rock with those fucking games. And I love it. But this is entitlement. It's this idea that you must be able to complete something, and therefore something's wrong with the game because you didn't do it. I told y'all I'd never beat Techno Clash. I never beat Vector Man 2. Growing up, Sega Genesis, a couple of others, and I'm not crying about it. I was just like, we just did that. Everybody had stacks of Super Nintendo games and Sega Genesis games that they never completed. And nobody was crying to the devs that, oh, it's too hard. Like, quit being a little bitch, man. Cut it out. Cut it out. But that's who you're combating in gaming. And if gaming experience sometimes, no matter, definitely AAA games, you get all this extravagant graphics and all that, and the gameplay seems to be fucking mundane as fuck. That's the reason. It's because that's enticing to a certain demographic of people, and that's who they're trying to target to make it accessible to the widest demographic. And making it accessible to the widest demographic does not always equal a great game. And it often can equal a very bad game, not just a bad one. You just watched a clip from my podcast, For Canon's Sake. Catch us live at 12 p.m. throughout the week over at youtube.com/YoungRipper59 and follow us over at odyssey.com/@YoungRipper59. If you want to watch the entire video cast after the show is over, just be sure to become a member on the YouTube channel. Of course, the full audio portion of the podcast is available for free on all major digital platforms, or just visit forcanonsake.com.